All right. Hi, everyone. Hello. Am I audible to all of you? Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Great. All right. Welcome to today's session, everyone. Today, we are going to have our second session in the journey of data structures in Java, right? And today's class is going to be more practical and very, very less theoretical, right? Unlike the last class where we had to kind of set the foundation for what exactly is Java and why do we really need Java, right? And what is the underlying foundation on which Java as a language really works. Today's class is going to be practical, where we are actually going to start coding in Java, okay? And actually talk about on what and a few important basic concepts which are going to be used again and again over the course. And we want to make sure that our fundamentals are very clear for those concepts. Okay. So I would recommend that if you have your ID ready, right, I will first explain the entire concept and then I will, so what I would recommend to do is first let me complete the entire, topic that I want to speak of and talk about. Okay. And then I will let the stage to you and make you or let you ask any questions that you would have, right? And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have once I have completed. And then I will give you another 5 minutes to quickly try out some of the things which I have written on your own systems also, so that in case you face any errors or in case you face any issues while running it on your own, you will be able to ask the questions. Okay. Does that sound good to everyone? We'll follow this pattern for practical classes, okay? We'll take 5 minutes usually to write down on your own computers also, right? So that you can try out if everything is working on your systems as well, right? And if in case you have any questions regarding that, you can obviously ask later. Make sense? Yes, don't worry, Milind, I will. So what IDs are all of you mostly using? Can I get a quick idea about that as well? What have you all installed? Okay, Ankan says VS Code, IntelliJ, VS Code, IntelliJ. Okay. Awesome. I see like a good 80% of you in using IntelliJ and some of you are using VS Code. Doesn't really matter. Would work kind of mostly the same in all the areas. All right. Okay. So I have my screen over here. So I'll kind of be looking in this direction. Okay. And okay, let's get started. I'll parallelly be writing notes as well for all of you, which you can use later like we always do. Okay. Just give me a second so that I can share my screen. Let me know when my screen is visible, okay? Okay. Again, welcome everyone. And today's session is going to focus on the practical implementations and some hands-on session on Java today. Okay, so the ID that I'm using right now is IntelliJ, right? And we will be setting up a basic project over here and start working on the project, start working on the implementation. I have already on my system set up a simple project under which we are going to write all our programs and all our codes, right? I'll give you again a quick walkthrough and how you can set up on your own. So you go to file and you go to new project. So for example, this course, all the codes of this course will run under a project. Okay. The name you could take any, for example, you take Java DSA course, something like that. Okay. And this is the location where your project is actually created and all the codes will be actually saved as well. Feel free to use any other location if you are more comfortable with that. The language, all the codes in this particular project will be in the language Java, right? So I have basically put in Java over here. We are not really building any application as such, a web backend or a front, any kind of a project as such, which we don't want to kind of share or create a package out of it. So the build system is simple, intelligent. And the JDK, which I said, Java Development Kit over here that I'm going to use is going to be 19 Oracle Open JDK version 19.0.2. If you do not have anything over here like this, feel free to download JDK, right? It will download the latest version for you, right? And it will basically store it at a particular location. Usually the location is /library/java/jvm, and then based on what version you have basically downloaded is what it will actually pick. Okay, and that is it. You simply create on Java, you simply create on create, click on create, and that is it, right? Your project will simply be created, right? Once your project is actually created, for example, I go to a new window to show you this particular project, right? The screen would look something like this. Do not worry about the version for JDK or anything like that. Any of the few latest versions would work because we are not doing anything to integrate or to, detail as such. We need a specific version. Any of the versions for learning basic data structures would actually be enough and would not let you or have you face any problems. Okay. So when you actually create a new project, the basic source, I would say, folder would actually be created for you by default, right? And under it, we will be starting to create different packages. Okay. So if you will go under source, there is already a main file over here, right? Which is going to have a basic written boilerplate code over here as well. Okay. I will explain all the code. For beginners, they might not be able to understand what is really happening, but don't worry. What exactly we are doing is we are just printing something on the console on the screen and we are running a for loop, right? So this is how you basically do it. All the programs are going to be written over here, right? Let's say I hope this kind of a zoom is zoomed enough for all of you and you are able to kind of see everything, right? If you want to create, let's say, another folder, I would say inside it, we actually call it like a package. So either you can directly add files in this Java class or you can actually add another package. Package is like a folder, kind of like a folder inside over here. Okay, so like I said, if you will see my part, what we will do today is just to maintain segregation, I will create another package. For example, this session is going to kind of talk about intro topics, which are like basic topics. So this will actually create like a package, or in a simpler terms, a folder for you. And in this, you can kind of create classes inside this. For example, my first code is going to be hello world. So this will be it, right? So inside intro topics, you have hello world. You can ignore this hello world. This is what I created for myself, right? You don't have to worry about it. I will simply delete it over here to avoid any confusion. Right? So this is how under source main is already existing. Either you can add directly some Java files inside source, or you can create another folder to be able to kind of segregate the classes which we are really having. Okay. So for every class, feel free to create a new package so that when you revisit later the code, it will be easier for you to actually understand and remember what exactly code did we write. Okay, so this is how basically everything is going to work around here, and we will be writing code together this way for all our classes moving forward. Clear to everyone so far? Any questions? I will be kind of telling you a lot of shortcuts also, as and when we will be starting to write code. Okay, so don't worry about that. For the time being, just make sure a basic project structure is ready for you and it has everything that you would need. Okay, let me remove this Java DSA course one. I will be using AlgoCamp Java DSA as my project. You feel free to kind of, use the one you want. This font size should be enough, right? If I'll do bigger, it'll just start like for basic class is fine, but then it'll not have a lot of code lines over here. Okay, try to see if this I feel should be enough for everyone. Correct? Yes, Milind, you can kind of understand it the same way. Roop, is that fine? This much should be fine, okay? Or you want it to be way bigger than this? Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so the basic rule is whenever you start learning a new language, okay, always basically try to first write a hello world kind of like a program, which is going to print something on the screen. Since it is a very simple program, we often introduce this kind of a statement whenever we write a new, I would say, or whenever we learn a new programming language. Okay, so in Java, how would a new program work is, right? First of all, also remember that whatever is the class name you keep over here, which is hello world, is going to be the name present over here as well, hello world. Okay, you must be having a lot of questions like what is public, what is class, what is package, and right, intro topic is actually the name of the package only. You might be having a bunch of questions about what these terms really mean. Okay, for the time being, just ignore them, right? Because these are related to OOPS concepts, which we have not done so far, and it will be approximately 10-15 classes after which we will introduce these concepts. So for the time being, just understand that this is something that you need to have, right? Or you need to have in your code, without which your code will not run, okay? Or without which a Java program will not run. As and when we will move forward, we are going to basically introduce these terms and understand the meaning of all of them, okay? So inside this, again, what I'm writing is something that you will always have to write inside every Java program. Okay. And again, like I said, I'll repeat myself again, that the meaning for all of these terms will actually become clear after a few classes have happened. Okay. So this is always that you have to write in front of each and every Java program. So either you can write it on your own, or either you can do PSVM. Okay, and then in my system, I'm pressing control space in Mac. It will be also pretty much the same for you. And I will click enter and it automatically writes for me as well. Okay, so this is going to be PSVM plus control and enter. You press along with it, which is actually going to run the code for you. In main Java, main.java, why the package name source is not mentioned, unlike hello world class where the topic name is intro topics. But yes, I think that is what I just explained as well. Let me do that once again if it wasn't clear to you. This is very similar to how a normal directory would work as well. Just give me a second to share my iPad screen so that you can see all what's happening. It's about having a folder inside a folder, or not having files and just having directly the file inside the folder. The idea is that itself. Let me just take that up once again. So in the real world also, in your computers, you can have a folder, right? Inside that folder, either you can have files or you can create another folder inside that folder, right? This is how a basic Unix directory system works. This is a folder. Inside the folder, either you can have another folder, right? Or you can have a bunch of files inside the folder, right? So what we have done over here is source is kind of like that root package over here. Okay, source is the root package, which is like in your Unix directory system also. It is the point where your project actually starts, and all the files are always inside source. Okay, that is why when you come over here, you don't have to write anything, because this file is directly inside the root, I would say, or the point where your package structure actually starts. But since hello world is not directly inside root, right? Either you could have also asked this question, right? That why is it written intro topics? Why is it not written source/intro topics, right? Because intro topics is also inside source. Again, the idea being that source is kind of like I would say it's like it's present everywhere, right? Everything has to be inside source only. So there is no point of mentioning source everywhere. That is why it is not present over here. Fayaz, it is clear? And next question is, can you please describe left side panel fold structure? What are these? Dinesh, for the time being, don't worry about all of these. Just worry about the fact that you have AlgoCam, your project name folder, and inside that you have source, and inside that I've created something. Okay, these are all the files which are external libraries, and which I was talking about class libraries in the intro section, which are basically there where you will add your, I would say, external class libraries, which you will import and use over here, and they will start appearing like it happens in JavaScript when you have a package.json file, if you know the reference. Okay. Otherwise, all the other files, please simply ignore for the time being. I will, when the time comes, will introduce all of them when they make sense. Okay. And Milind, yes, feel free to use any package name you want. This is what just have I used. If you feel you're more comfortable with 001, something like this, yes, you're welcome to use that as well. Everyone is clear? Project name is Sayatan over here, like AlgoCam Java DSA. It's mentioned over here. Okay, so once you actually reach over here, like I just said, you always need to have this public static void main kind of a structure over here. And whatever code that you will write always has to be between these two braces. Okay. Right, whatever Java program is there that you need to actually run and that you need to actually execute, any piece of command has to be inside these, I would say, space over here, right? The logic is actually more complicated than this, but like I said, we are not in a position to actually do all of that right now and understand it in one go. So just understand that whatever piece of code that will actually run always has to be between these two lines. So this is the statement that you have to write to print anything on the screen is going to be system.out.println. Okay. And then under these two, I would say, braces, you write hello world. Okay. And every statement in Java code has to end with a semicolon, unlike other languages like Python and JavaScript, where it is not compulsory to add a semicolon towards the end. Okay. Now, this is the statement or system.out.println. Okay. This is the statement which is actually going to print anything on the screen, whichever you want. Okay. Now, another question that could be asked is that, okay, this is the piece of code, but how do I run this code, right? So for running this code, there are again multiple options available. How I like to do to create clarity is there would be this arrow kind of a green arrow kind of a button, which is present on the top right corner. Okay, and if you will run this, right, it will actually run your code over here, right, and it will actually show you the output. Okay, it is actually showing below also what exactly it is doing. It says starting hello world over here, right, and it is going to run the code for you. Right, let me quickly see what the error is. Public static void main system.out.println clause.found. Okay, so I think it was trying to, okay, so the issue is that it was trying to run this one, this file I just created, so it was not able to understand that this was the one it was running. Now it will run. So you saw, right, earlier I just deleted one hello world file, so it was actually trying to run that. So over here, what you will see is this hello world kind of a position over here. So this actually shows you which file is actually running. Okay. So earlier it was trying to run a file which did not really exist, right? The correct file is hello world and it has found the correct path. So it is going to run. For you, it will not show this error. If you will try to directly run this code, it will work absolutely fine. And whatever is, like I said, you write over here between these braces will actually appear over here. Okay. If you would like to write something else, right, you may do that as well, and it will print that particular statement for you over here. Okay, so this is how exactly you are going to, or this is how exactly the first hello world program runs. Okay, Again, to clarify a few things, you see it written over here, class hello world, right? In Java, I would say every application has to begin with a class definition. That means whatever is the name you see over here, hello world, has to be the same name over here as well. Okay. And in this program, what I have written, the name of the class is hello world. Okay. For now, just remember that every Java I would say application has to be a class, right? And the name of the class has to match with the file name as well. Then we have public static void main over here, right? This is the main method. Every application in Java has to have the main method, right? The Java compiler is actually going to start executing the code from the main method only. Like I said, the compiler will start looking for the actual code and start executing the entire program from this particular space. Okay. Over here, like I said, you don't have to, for those of you who already know about the concepts of functions and methods, they would know that a function actually needs to be called in order to be executed, which is exactly true for a programming language like Java also, except for the main method. Okay. Main method is something which gets, I would say, executed automatically as soon as you run your Java program. It does not has to be called. It gets automatically executed. While you will see in future classes, we will talk about functions in detail where we have to actually call a function in order to execute. Okay, methods and all is something which is going to be executed, and it is going to come in the future classes. Okay, and here what you're actually printing is a string, right? As it is a string. What is string? String is nothing but a sequence of characters, right? So always a sequence of characters has to be inside the braces. Okay. So this is how you write a simple, I would say, hello world program. Would you want a quick minute to try out this on your own as well? Just take 2 minutes, not more than that. See if this is working for you or not. No. Sayatan, there is no way of calling a main method. It is always explicitly automatically picked by Java program. Just quickly see if you're also able to write this piece of code, right? And also get the output over here. When you're done, just write a quick yes in the chat and I will know that you're done and we will move forward. So we have approximately 42 students in the class, which I would want most of you to be able to do. Tarun, I just mentioned that point that at this point of time, I will not be able to explain why exactly it's string args, why exactly is public static void main and not static public void main, right? The way it is written is something that you will have to kind of just, think that it is something that you will have to understand for now. In future classes, it will make sense. Why exactly did I write over here? And why exactly did I choose to write this over here? Okay. All of these terminologies, public, static, void, main, they actually have a very deep and an important meaning to why they are over here and what do they really represent. Okay. But again, it's out of scope for today's session. It's always the thing when you learn Java. I teach JavaScript also, I teach Ruby also, I teach Python also. It is never the case with that, with those programming languages, because over there, a class is not specifically required to have, a method is not required to have when you execute a program. But in Java, it is a compulsion to have a syntax like this. Yes, it is like a boilerplate, except for line number 7. Everything that is written from line number 1 to line number 9 is a boilerplate code that is going to be in every Java program. Everyone is done? Sujal, Sushil, Tushyap. Awesome. So now if you have actually given a try on how exactly this Hello World program is running, we are going to talk about 2 important things: basic input and output, right? What that would mean is, how do you basically output something to the console screen, right? And then how do you take an input from the console screen as well? Okay. First, we are just going to talk about the output, right? How exactly do we present the output on the screen? So there are actually 3 ways to do that. The first way to do that is system.out.println, which we just saw, right? Or you could actually be using system.out.print, right? Or third, you could be using system.out.printf. Okay. So currently we are just going to talk about how do you take the, or how do you bring the output. The input part we'll talk about after some time, because we need to understand the concept of variables and data types in order to be able to take the input. Okay. So there are 3 ways of how you can actually be presenting an output on the console screen for a particular statement. Okay. Now here, understand that if you kind of try to demystify this statement also now, any of you who would be able to relate, system is actually a class, out is actually a field, right, over here, and then println is a method which is present inside it. Okay. But let's see what does it exactly mean. So println is Java is interesting. This we have already seen, right? It is a simple statement which tries to give or present your output on the screen, right? Here we have used println over here. So I would say there are 3 statements, and there is going to be like a difference between both of them. Let me show you through an example. You will be able to, I will show you an example, and I think you will automatically be able to tell what is the difference between both of them. Or we're just comparing println and print so far. Let me run this. Okay. So you see the output over here, right? Can you all take a guess what exactly is happening? And what could be the difference between both of them? Exactly. Like I was saying, I would not have to actually tell you, you will know yourself. When you do println, right, it prints something on this, it is print whatever is written between the quotes, right? And same is what print also does. So that is the similarity between both of them, right? The similarity between println and print is that both of them actually prints whatever is written inside the quote statements. The difference between both of them is that when you take println, it actually takes the cursor. So it prints something, whatever you have written over here, and then takes the cursor to the next point, which is over here. Then again println, so it prints the statement over here and then take the cursor over here. Okay. But when you do print, just print, it prints whatever is there, but it does not actually moves the cursor. Okay. It will keep the cursor on the very same line, and the statement after that will actually go on the same screen. Okay. So that is the difference between both of them, that this println, so you see the N at the end, right? This LN kind of N, that actually means this apostrophe, / and then N, which is kind of taking everything to the new, I would say, line. Okay, that is what is actually happening over here, right? Whenever we use print and println. Okay, over here now the other thing that you have is printf. Okay, so printf is actually kind of used for string formatting. Okay, printf is actually more popularly used in one another programming language, if you would know. If you would know, printf is actually popular in another programming language as well. And if you would know the purpose of printf, okay, what it actually kind of does is it actually is used for string formatting, kind of like a format. The F over here stands for formatting. Okay, so where if you have if you have a value for something, whatever you print in it, right, it tries to kind of put the value across it. For example, the syntax would be simple, which is, let's say, I'll explain what I'm doing over here as well. Don't worry about that. It is system.out.printf, right? And then you put the format over here, and then you put the arguments post that. Okay. So here is the format. Exactly in what format would you really want the output of, I would say, the thing that you need to print, and the arguments is what exactly would you want to be printed post that. Okay, so that is what is actually, I would say, going to take care of for you and do that for you. Okay, if you want to, let's say, see like a quick example for this as well. Again, remember, it's for output formatting mostly, and that is what the F, I would say, really stands for over here. Let's see. We have not done a lot of concepts related to this. So let's say I have a statement like this where I have hello. So this is again the format which I want the code to be printed as, right? And then I do this. And so those of you who would know what exactly is C and C++, if you would have written the code in it, you would know what exactly does that mean over here. So this will not work because I've written println over here. But if you will go to the printf, right? So if you ever feel like you want to know the meaning of something now in IntelliJ, it's a very good thing that if you hover over it, right, it actually shows you also that what is exactly happening. So it says that this is an invocation of this method of the form printf, where you have to send the format, and then you have to send the arguments over here. Okay, and then after that, this is the format, out.format you can use, right? This is a string, which is the syntax, right? Where you also have kind of mentioned the arguments, and then it is actually going to return you in the output that stream of string itself over here. Okay, let's take Milan, or if there's another example on the screen, let's take that one as well and see how does it work. So let's do one more thing to get a clear If I just do this, that means it just takes the cursor to the next thing. Okay. See, so over here, it is printing hello, and then whatever is mentioned over here, it is kind of taking the value which is mentioned in the terms of arguments. If this example isn't that clear, you can take Java is %d %fun, and 100 is basically taken as a value placed over here, and then you have the output over here. So this is the three statements, which is println, print, and printf. Clear to everyone? Harshdeep, have you tried S out? Yes, S out works. So in Eclipse, SYSO works, SYSO. In IntelliJ, if you will just simply write S out, you don't have to write the same thing again and again. Just press Control and Enter, and it will give you the output. Dinesh will not go deep into /s/t, okay? Because again, this is more of a C++ concept, right? This is not actually used a lot as a syntax in Java, okay? There are even easier ways to kind of take a value of a variable and append in Java, right? So we won't go deep into it. Even printf is not, I would say, it's hardly used anywhere in Java as a language, okay? We mostly try to use the concept of plus in the S out statements, or we try to append the variables directly. Okay, if you would like to go deep into it, try to learn how all of this works in a C or C++. You'll have a very good idea on how these concepts actually work. Okay, in Java, we hardly use printf. We either use this or we use this. Clear to everyone? How do you actually in different ways present output? Awesome. Great. All right, then. I think everyone is clear. So the next thing that we are going to talk about, output part is here. The input part, we are going to hold off for some time. Okay, so we've already learned how do you present an output on the screen using Java. The input part, we're going to hold off for some time, do variables and data types, and then come back to input as well. Okay, so the next thing that we will talk about is data types and variables, right? We'll understand what that exactly means, right? And what is the purpose behind using those as well. Okay. Again, we always like to learn in AlgoCamp through the way of examples and doing everything, right? So now the word data is introduced in the terminology data types, right? That means there's something to do with data over here, and how do we really deal with it? Now let's take a simple example and go to any website that you really like. For example, let's go to Amazon. Okay, so this is how a typical Amazon websites look like, right? And you are able to see that there is a lot of data over here on this website, right? You can see the data is in form of strings, right? String is nothing but a sequence of characters, right? So you can see there is data in the form of strings. You can also see that there are integer values also, 18, 24, 34. Apart from that, you would also see over here that there are decimal values as well, right? And in the world of programming, decimal values are actually known as floating point values, right? And then do you also see a bunch of special characters also? Percentage, dot, right? This rupee sign, correct? And then you would also see this and sign over here, right? And you would also see individual characters also, if there are any at some places, right? So what you would see is there is a lot of different types of data available, right? That should explain the terminology to you, data types, right? That means there is a lot of different types of data that is actually available, and we should be having relevant ways to store that data as well. Okay. That is what data types actually means, right? So you could have string, you could have a single character, you could have integer values, you could have floating point values, right? Very large floating point values with a lot number of numbers is kind of known as double, right? That is how exactly the concept works, right? A very big integer value is known as long. Okay, how much of a big integer value is known as long, and all the nitty-gritty details concepts we're just going to discuss, right? But understand that whenever you're building an application and dealing with any kind of data, the data could actually be of a lot of different types. Okay, there are a lot of different data types available which we should be able to store. Okay, so what we do is, you know that every information that we have, we are going to store in our computer RAM, right? So what we do over here is, whenever we are dealing with variables, this is your computer memory, okay? When you are writing program, you would need to store all of these variable, or I would say all of these data type values, right? Even Amazon as a website would be storing all of these values somewhere or the other, right? And whenever you need, these values are simply being fetched up, right? So what actually happens is, the computer memory actually store all these data types and the values with it in like a container, sort of like a structure. Okay, so what we do is, whenever you have to store something in your program, right, what the computer memory does, it actually creates a container for you. Okay, it actually creates a container for you in which you can store any value you want. Okay, so whenever, let's say, you want to store the name of a student in the class, for example, Sayantan. Okay, my program actually requires me to save the name of the student Sayantan basically in my class. Okay. So what actually happens behind the scene then in your computer memory, at a particular address in your computer memory, you have Sayantan name present. Okay. Now you have the name present, but what if you want to retrieve this name in future? Right? So what do we do is this container, right? This is not actually a container. I'm just using a word over here. This container is actually given a unique name. Okay. For example, this unique name is given name over here. So in future, if you ever want to fetch the details of Sayantan as a student, right? I am just going to use the terminology name, which is going to uniquely identify and point towards this address. Otherwise, you know, right? Computer memory addresses are very random, 20x, FD, XY, M. Like this is what actually computer addresses are, right? Where your information would actually be stored. But it's not really possible to be able to actually remember these. So we have variable or we have names, right, which are used to uniquely identify that container or that location over which your information is stored. Okay. And when you actually define a constraint on a container, right? For example, I allocated some space on a container, basically called the container name for unique identification, and told also that over here, only integer value can be stored. That is nothing but a data type. So when I write the statement, for example, int speed equal to 20, what that means is in computer memory somewhere, there is a container, okay? The container name, which now in the world of programming, we call variable names. Okay, is actually going to be speed, variable name or container name. In that, the constraint is the value can only be of the type integer. So that is why we have 20 over here. Okay, so if I try to now do int speed equal to 40.6, you will see in the demo that I will give you that it will actually throw you an error and will not accept this. Why? Because you created a container, named it speed, which is fine, but you said that the data type, this is nothing but the data type of the container named speed. You said that it has to be integer only, right? And this in the world of programming is known as a floating point value. All decimal values are known as floating point values in the world of Java or any like in the world of programming, right? And which is completely invalid. If you have defined a constraint, data types are nothing but constraint that you put on the variable that is or the container name that you have, right? And this is how it works. This is a very high level overview. Let's actually go deep into this now. That is when you'll actually start having questions and, start having, I would say, we'll start having discussions on how exactly this works. Okay. Let me still write up a few things parallelly so that you have good set of notes in futures. Let's first talk about variables. Okay. So the basic definition is a variable is nothing but a location in memory, right, to basically hold the data. Nothing like that. Okay. To actually indicate the storage area. So a variable is nothing but that location, right, or that container. To actually indicate the storage area, like I said, you have a storage location, you have a variable, you have a container, but you need a unique name to identify that particular variable or that particular container, right? So to indicate the storage area, that memory area, each variable is actually should be given a unique name. And that in the world of Java is known as Java identifiers. Okay. So this speed over here is nothing but an identifier to this container, to this variable Sayantan or maybe 20. Okay. Next is we'll talk about how do you actually create variables. Okay. So inside this, I will create a new class. So I'm variables demo. Like I said, inside this also, you have to make sure always any code will not run without this. So you have this over here. Okay. How do you create a variable? You mention the data type first, right? Then you mention the identifier, which is going to uniquely identify that container. For example, it's speed limit, and then 80 over here. Again, 80 is valid over here because this is a int value. So speed is a variable of int data type, which is having a value 80 assigned to it. In terms of, I would say, logically looking at it, this means something like this. The assigned value to that container is 80. Okay. The int data type suggests that the value can only hold integers over here. Okay. So in this example, we have assigned value to the variable during declaration. Okay. So this is assigning value during declaration. Okay. However, it is not mandatory. It will become absolutely clear what this means. Assigning value during declaration. That means this is speed. This means you are declaring a variable. When you just write in speed, that means that you just have created this. You just have declared a variable. You have declared a container over here. Okay. But nothing has been assigned to it. And in the next line, you could be doing this. Okay. And this is assigning value to a variable. And in the next line, you basically did this, where you put the value. So either you can follow this format of doing everything in a single line, where you are assigning the value also in the very same statement where you are declaring, or you could be using two different lines to be able to do that. Okay. Always remember that Java is a statically typed language. What does statically typed language basically mean? Is that it means that all the variables must be declared before they can be used. So you can't be doing this. This is invalid. And you will see over here also, it is kind of giving you the error itself, right? But if you will probably do the same thing in, let's say, JavaScript, it will not really throw you an error, right? It will kind of not throw you an error and work fine. But in this case, remember that since Java is a statically typed language, you have to basically declare the variable name first, and then you can assign the value to it. Okay. So again, I'm repeating, variable is actually the container. Okay. Like you will read in the definition also, variable is a location in which you are holding the data. And identifier is the unique name that is given to the variable. So variable and container are kind of, I would say, terms that are used interchangeably. Variable / container are kind of use the terms interchangeably. Variable name and identifier, it is kind of like a term which can be used interchangeably. Okay, so this is how, in terms of exact terminology, it means and how you are actually going to work this. Clear to everyone? Then I will talk about how do you manipulate these variables if declaration and assignment is clear to all of you. Puneet, I will talk about that. Don't worry. So the answer to that question in short terms is, it depends on what kind of variable it is. Okay, I'll show you. Stack and heap is completely different. We have not introduced a stack heap concept so far. Okay, Santan? Anybody with any other questions? Can we move forward if nobody has any questions? This is just for int I have shown. I will show you for more as well. Don't worry. Like I said, let me go through the entire end for data types and variables. Then I'll take up any questions that you have, but most probably I'll clear all of them earlier on. Okay. So one question at this point of time that could come to your mind is that imagine this statement was not there. Okay. That is only int speed was there. Okay. So what exactly would actually be in this container, right? The moment I just do int speed, is this container empty? Or like, is this container kind of null? Or what exactly does the containers actually have when nothing has actually been, told to them what to exactly store? So to see that output, what you can do is you can do this. Right? And then you can just put the name of the variable. Okay. Remember, the data type over here is actually going to be speed, right? So see, in case, so this kind of a expected response is different for different languages. In Java, it is actually going to give you a compile time error. Compile time error means that it is not going to compile the code itself. The variable speed has not been initialized. So it is what rather saying is that since you've not initialized this variable, there is no point, or it doesn't make sense at all to be able to print its value over here. But remember, if it would have been any other language like JavaScript or Python, the concept works entirely different. But in Java, it won't let you run the code itself. If you will try to even run the code over here, okay, it will not let you do that, giving a very valid error that a variable speed was actually created, but it was never initialized. So I'm not in a position to print anything for that. Okay. But again, remember, this kind of a concept is also different when we will move to arrays data structure, right? And others data structure, it behaves differently. But when you are just having a simple variable, it won't let you print. So these side of things you can always try out on your own as well. Okay, just to, if you're always intrigued to know what exactly is happening and how exactly things are working. Okay, so this was about how do you actually create variables. The next thing is, how do you change the value of variables? Is it like once I gave the value speed is equal to 20, is it written on stone? Can I never change the value of this variable? Right? The answer is no. It is possible once, let's say it is just a container, right? So once in this container, if you, let's say, put the value 20, it is very much possible to override this value to some other value, but keeping in mind it has to be integer. Okay, so if I just simply do over here, speed is equal to 50. Okay, and let's say one time I print the value of speed over here. So if you want to print the value in any variable, you just put the value, and one time I put over here. Okay, just to see what exactly is happening. And then I try to run the code. What you will see is over here, see, first of all, it is not picking this kind of, it is still executing the hello world program. Okay, we have to execute this. So another way to make sure that you don't have to go over here and you directly execute what you are writing, you can also run the code from here as well. So in this case, if I run this, you can see int speed was there, then the value was 20. That is why when I print the value, you get 20 in the output. And when you have speed is equal to 50, and when you try to print the value, the output is 50. Why? Because the value inside the speed container, the container which is having the name speed has actually changed. So initially the value was 20, but now the value has been changed to 50. Okay. However, one thing that you need to remember is that you can always change the value inside the container. Okay. But another question that could come is, can I change the data type of the container as well? Right. For example, speed as a variable, or speed as the name of a container was only able to take integer values. Can now it start taking, somehow I do some change, can it start taking maybe string? Can it start taking decimal? No, it is not possible. We cannot change the data type of a variable in Java within the same scope. Okay, so there's a concept of scoping also, which we will talk about later. But for the time being, with what we have done so far, just understand that we are not in a position and it is not possible to change the data type of a particular variable. You can change the value inside which in the variable, but not the data type. Okay. So don't worry about it for now. There is a concept of scoping which allows us to do that also, known as variable scoping. But for the time being, we'll just keep it simple and we won't like stretch enough. We will kind of, after 2-3 classes, learn about the concept of scoping as well. Clear to everyone? Any questions? If not, just keep writing yes, yes in the chat and I'll just keep moving forward. No. Once the variable name is the variable name, it will always be same. Can I go? Yes, Sayantika, everything is clear. Rohit, Mukesh, Harish, everything is clear, right? Awesome. Don't worry, I'll give some time also for you to write down everything. I'm just kind of trying to teach a bunch of topics so that you can take time after that. Okay. So once you know how to create variables and how do you change their values, remember that you also have to kind of follow some rules or conventions for naming variables. Okay, it's not like you can keep any variable name in Java and it will work. Okay, that is not the case. You have to follow certain rules. So Java programming language has its own set of rules and conventions for naming variables. The first is Java is case sensitive. Okay, that means if the two variable names are age, even this, all are different variables over here. Okay, so you can do int age is equal to 20 and int age is equal to, let's say, 25. And when you will try to print both, it is not the same. It is actually different, and Java is very, very case sensitive. So in this case, you are going to have two different values printed, again, because of the fact they are completely different variable names. The second point is that Java, as in terms of variable namings, the variables must start with, this is a very important point. Variable names must start either with the letter, okay, or an underscore, okay, like this, or a dollar, like this, okay, sign, right? So this is a valid variable name. This is a valid variable name. And this is also a valid variable name. Okay. Anything apart from that as a variable name will not actually work and the code will not compile itself already. If you will try to do this, this is wrong. You can try out on your own as well. This will not compile and it will give you a error. Okay. Even you cannot have white spaces. Even this is invalid or wrong. Okay. Variable names cannot have white spaces. It is completely wrong to have that. Okay. Here, we need to use variable, let's say, which has more than one word. So ideally, so different language uses different conventions, but in Java we usually use camel casing. What does camel casing mean is this kind of variable names. Okay, so if you have, let's say, you want to print the roll numbers, okay, or you have to do some use case, so you could do like this, but you can't make a variable name like this. Okay, this you can do, and this is good to read also, which is mostly used in Java as well, right? As a convention to have maybe a variable name which has more than one word. Okay, so this is also a convention which is used. There is a very popular programming language which uses this kind of a convention to name the variables. I hope all of you would know that. Python. Python as a language likes to actually uses this kind of a snake casing, I think we call it, of how to actually create, I would say, the variable names, right? And this is known as camel casing, which Java actually likes to use. Again, even if you will use this, Java will not throw you an error. It's perfectly fine. But again, some languages have a convention on their own, so they like to use it. That. Okay. Again, one important, very important thing while naming the variables, which I see so many students doing, right, while they're actually doing, even working in big companies, right? Always remember that the variable names needs to make sense. Right? Don't keep variable names like this, int s, okay, or int n, int l. It doesn't really talk about what exactly variable is going to do or going to store, right? For example, this is a very good, I would say, variable name, right? Speed limit, because it talks about 80 is actually a speed limit, right? But if I would do int s, would you really know what the variable is actually used for or what the variable is actually storing, right? No, it doesn't. So we need to use very good names that actually makes sense. Okay, so always try to use the variable names which make sense. Trust me, these are, you might feel like these are not very big things, but they get very easily reject you in interviews, right? Especially big companies, big corporate companies, even companies like Microsoft. I have been in so many interviews where people will simply reject it because of code quality, right? In the end, how you put all these things is under code quality as a use case. The quality of the code should be very good. If someone is reading your code, right? Imagine I am looking at an entirely new repository and I'm starting a new project. Okay, I would really want the code to be written really well, right? So that I can actually go through everything, and it doesn't take me a lot of effort to understand what that means. If I will write S, it will take me a world to know that S means speed limit over here. Okay, so always and always try to use good variable. Okay, this is what I would say exactly. All right. Okay. Yes, even this kind of conventions, again, this is a valid convention, but it is a bad practice. Like nobody really uses this kind of a practice to actually, creates variables, right? But again, it's my duty to tell you that this kind of convention would not throw you an error. Okay, this kind of a convention will work absolutely fine. But again, refrain from using all of these because these are not good practices whatsoever. Okay. All right, so moving on from the world of variables, we will now go a little deeper and talk about data types. So what I'll do is I'll give you all quick 2 minutes to maybe try this out on your own as well. Okay, maybe take a few variable names, okay, and see if they are fine. Maybe put this and see if the code gives you an error or not, or something like that, and then we'll move forward. Okay, if any of you wants to take a quick 2 minutes break as well, right, refresh yourself and come back, feel free to do that as well till the time others can quickly try. Okay, then we'll talk about data types in today's class. We'll complete that also, and we'll also talk about comments. What are comments in Java, which I have been actually, already dropping them a lot, but we'll have a slightly more detailed discussion about that. Does that make sense? Awesome. Go ahead, quickly try this out. I'll just come in a minute and grab some water. All right, everyone tried out? Awesome. Moving on, next what we'll do is we'll talk about data types in Java. Okay, so data types, to define them, basically specify the different sizes, okay, and values that can be stored in a variable. Okay, so far we just talked about the different values, okay, that can be stored in a variable. We didn't associate the concept of data type with sizes. Okay, we will do that now. So there are two types of, I would say, data types in Java. The first is primitive data types. The second is non-primitive data types. Primitive data type basically means they include Boolean. There are 8 primitive data types: Boolean, character, byte, char, and we also have int, we also have short, we also have long, we have float, and which one is left? Double. 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Did I introduce more? 4. Did I push 2 char? Okay, yes. Non-primitive data types could be classes, interfaces, or maybe arrays as well. The difference between both of them would be that primitive data types are actually the one which is provided to you by Java. Okay, Java itself basically tells you that these types of data types are present. Okay, non-primitive data types are those data types which we kind of created on our own. Okay, which I would say is not provided by Java as itself, right? But it is actually created by us for our benefit. Okay. Strings actually also is a non-primitive data type. Okay. So Java in itself only gives us char as a data type, right? We itself said that a sequence of characters makes up a string. Hence, string is also a non-primitive data type. Okay. When you will understand these concepts of classes, interfaces, arrays, then it will more make sense what I was talking about, like how Java in itself doesn't really provide these data types by default, but you do have to create them on their own. Okay. So over here, also to put like slightly bigger umbrella on top of this, sometimes I also like to teach this topic this way as well. For example, we have data type. Data types are of 2 types. Like if you want to kind of teach it in a or learn it in a tree kind of like a structure. Non-primitive, okay. In primitive also the classification is Boolean and numeric. In non-primitive, it is simple. String, array, and others, classes, interfaces, etc. In Boolean, I would say we just have Boolean as one. In numeric also, we have 2, which is character and integral. In character, the data type is char, how we call it. And integral also, it is of 2 types. Integer data types and floating point data types. In integer also, we have 4 types, which is going to be byte, short, int, long, and floating point has float and double. What I showed you over now is this, like I told you all these 8. But like if you would like to kind of, zoom it out of a little bit in like a 3D hierarchical structure kind of format, this is what it means. Okay. So that means that over here, So like I said, data types not just try to define the different values that you can store in a variable, but sizes as well. Okay. Now I will talk about one of them, all of them one by one, and you will understand why in integer, basically we have these 4 types. Okay. And how in floating point, you just have these 2 types. Okay. So you'll understand through example. That's the best way to actually learn what exactly data types are. Okay. So let's go over them one by one. All the 8 predefined data types by Java known as primitive data types. Okay. So the first that we will talk about, we will start with the easiest one and the simplest one, which is going to be Boolean. Okay. So Boolean as a data type, right? It can only take 2 possible values. Either it can take true or it can take false. The default value in a Boolean variable. So in this case, now the default value is possible. The default value is false. Okay. And they are actually used for true and false conditions. If you ever want to check whether a condition is true or false, true and false conditions. Okay. This is what they are used for. Let's take a quick demo. Okay, so if I do Boolean is what you need to write, flag equal to true. Over here, if I do flag, what it is going to do, I'll directly run from here. It is going to print the value true for me. Okay, the Boolean data type specifies 1 bit of information, but its size, like I would say, can't be really defined precisely. But yeah, Boolean is basically like this. So it can either take a true value or a false value. Don't worry, at the end, I will draw a proper table also to tell you for all data types what is the default value and how much size also do they take in computer memory. Okay, that is also very important. That is, if I create true, how much size it takes in my computer memory, because when you scale your application, it becomes really, really relevant. That I will just accumulate all the information towards the end. The second data type that you have available is byte. Let's talk about byte. My bad. So when we talk about byte, remember the byte data type, if you saw in the image, it is under integer values. So it will take integer values in it, but with a constraint that the byte data type can have values from -128 to 127. Okay, only in this range of values it is going to be taken. Okay, if it's certain, so only use byte when you are certain that the value of a variable will be within this range. Then it is actually used. Why? Because it actually uses or saves space. Okay, again, for the space and size kind of a thing, I will accumulate the information towards the end. The default value that it also has is 0. So you can do byte range, right? And range could be 124. Okay, it will, if you will give a bigger value, right, it will not really work that way. For example, my God, I was writing so only, my bad. I'm just more comfortable with other. So you see 124 is printed. What if I do 127? It should be accepted as well. Right? What if I do 129? Okay. So what I would want you to guess is over here, it will not actually make me run only, right? And it will simply say, if you will hover over it, Again, IntelliJ is a very, very good tool, and it gives you the error itself here only, saying that you have provided the data type byte, but you have put in the data type as byte, but you should have ideally provided. Okay, so that means it's not really valid. There is a way to forcefully actually tell the compiler also to not throw an error to actually do this. But again, that is the concept of typecasting, which we will do in future classes. But for the time being, just know that even if you will try to put a bigger value, which is not in the range, or a way smaller value, you will start getting error. Okay, so this is what the byte, I would say, data type is. Okay, so it is again a primitive data type like this. Let me just put back a good value so that we can run our future code. Next, what we have is the short data type. I just complete everything once and then I'll take up any questions that you may have. Okay, so short is actually a data type in Java that can hold values from -3, I would remember, 2768, yeah, to 32767. Okay, and again, the rule is simple. If you are certain that the value of the variable will be within this range, right, then only use this. Otherwise, use the one that is above short, which is int. Again, the default value for this is also 0. Okay, so you could do short temperature, let's say over here, and then if you do this, it is going to be this, right? Okay. And you can see -200 works absolutely fine over here. Sayantan, yes, I did not introduce this concept because again, we have not studied this, so I don't want to kind of bombard you with the information. But yes, the concept of signed and unsigned and 2's complement is basically applicable over here. Okay, so when I say this is -128 to 127, it is 8-bit signed 2 complements integer. Okay, and when I say -3 to 768, this is basically 16-bit signed 2 complements integer, right? When I will talk about int, it will be 32-bit signed 2's complement integer. Okay, and kind of long is 64-bit signed 2 complements integer. Okay, others, don't fret about it and don't get scared by what I just said. Okay, we will introduce the concept of 1's complements, 2's complements, signed and everything. It comes under the topic of number system. There we'll get a better idea. Clear to everyone? But for those who know the concept of signed, unsigned, I have already told you the idea. Clear to everyone? Awesome, great. Let's move on. Okay, so after short, what we have is int, right? So when we talk about the Java integer data type, right, I would say basically can hold values from -2 to the power 31, okay, to 2 to the power 31. Okay, this is, yes, this is -1. Okay, so if you are using Java 8 or later, right, you can actually use unsigned 32-bit integer, right? But again, don't worry about that concept. What that simply means is that if you use int over here now, a value like this, -425. Okay, int I've actually used. So it says that the variable name needs to be unique, right? So since range was already there, I tried to create another variable with the same name, so it was giving me an error. Okay, so it was int ranges, right? And this is completely valid. It's not really going to throw me any error. Okay, if you want, feel free to print this as well. Okay, over here. Then what you have is long type. Okay, I know the question that is coming to at least half of your mind or half of yours mind right now is, why do we need all of these, right? Why not? Obviously, you know that I'm moving towards long, which can hold to the values of the range of minus 2 to the power 63 to the power 63 minus 1, right? And why do we really have to keep all of this, right? Why not just keep long, and why do we have to study so many of them data types? Again, the answer will come very soon, okay? But just for the now, understand that long can actually hold values in this range, right? If you are, again, I would say for all of them, remember that the default value is again 0 only over here. Okay, so remember, when you are using long, there is just one difference based on what we have kind of done so far, that you use kind of, so it can again take negative, positive values both. So let's say if I'm doing, this is how you represent long data type. Okay, notice the use of L over here at the end of the number. This represents that this is an integer of the type long. Okay, this is an integer of the long type. So usually when you're using long data type, we put the L towards the end. Again, this is just a convention. No as such, I would say, too much of logic that goes behind it. Okay, so this is all I would say what we covered right now was this Boolean and then the 4 integrals. Let's talk about the next as well. Then we'll accumulate our information so far. Next is what we have, double. Right? Now the double data type is actually it means that it is a double, I would say, precision float 64-bit floating point digit. Okay, should never be used for, so it's like I said, it works on the concept of precision. If there are more than 64 digits, the precision might go away. So it is never used for precise values such as currency. Okay, it's always used for just getting a precision of what the values could be. Okay, so over here, it's basically going to take up precision till 64 bits after the decimal. Okay, after the floating point. So it should never be used for precision values such as currency. Okay, so how do you write it? Now, none of the data types that we discussed so far can actually take double. Number is equal to minus 42.3. Something like this. Okay, this will work, right? Corresponding to that, I will explain also. So like, you know, byte was the smallest, then we had short on top of it, then we had int on top of it, then we have long on top of it. Similar is the case with floating point, float and double, right? Float is smaller and double is kind of a bigger, covering a bigger range on top of it. So when I say float is kind of, again, float data type is a single precision 32-bit, like it will give precision up to 32 bits floating points, that is decimal. Floating point is like that point after those decimal digits. Okay, if you are interested in learning more about single precision and double precision floating point operations, right, if you would like to ever read about it, I'm sharing a very good Stack Overflow article. Please save all these articles also. These are very, very good. You get sometimes questions asked in interviews about these, so it's always good to know about them. Okay, so if you ever like to know about 64-bit, like we discussed in the last class, 64-bit processors, right, and then we have single precision, double precision, right, how all of that works, what's the math behind it, how does the precision actually works. This is a very good article which will help you understand everything. Like someone on Stack Overflow wrote a very good article. It has actually above 234 ticks also. So you'll understand in detail what is it about. Okay. So again, this is also, since again it works on the concept of precision and not accuracy, we don't use it for precision values at currency. And again, for this double, the default value is 0.0. And for this also, the value is 0 point. Okay, so if you would like to now put float over here as well. And remember, when you're using float, like we were doing for long, right? Notice over here that you can't just do it like this. And again, you can see already it is telling you not to do this as well. Like long for floats, you should do this. You should put a F in the end. It's because, again, when we will talk about the concept of literals, you'll know why we put like a F in the end. Okay, so this is minus 242.3, but for long and for numbers, you have to put like a L or a F towards the end. Okay, so this is what the idea is about float and double. And the last one that we have is character. Okay, I just complete everything first, and then it would be a good time to give the stage to the students. So first of all, understand character I introduced in the end for a very good reason, that it's basically a 16-bit Unicode character. Okay, the minimum value of char data type is this U, and then this. Remember, characters are always between single quotes, okay, which is nothing but 0, okay, and the maximum value of the character is this. Okay, and this is the default one. Let me show you. So this is again a kind of a Unicode characters that we are writing. Okay, if you ever like to kind of talk about Unicode characters also, so Unicode character is a table, okay, which has actually been introduced, which tells us all the valid characters in Java. Okay, so there were used to be ASCII characters also, which is used to be a set of 128 characters, which is known to programming languages. When we came to Java, we identified a set of, I would say, I think there is a big number. It goes up to the range of 65,000 approximately, which tells us about all the acceptable characters. Okay, so if I ever do like this, I'll show you the table also. You'll understand then that way. If I do this U and 0051. Okay, over here. And then let's say I print letter. Okay, so it's actually going to print a certain character. I think it's Q. It's Q. Okay, let me show you the Unicode table actually. So Unicode table actually consists of all the characters which are accepted. So that could contain the, I would say, the characters in the Chinese language also, and like a lot more characters which are considered acceptable. See. So these are all the characters which are considered acceptable. I wanted a proper list. So let me first show you the ASCII table. These were the earlier set of characters which were considered acceptable. Okay, where you basically had the numbers over here from 0 to 9. You had caps lock characters. Okay, after that you basically had this characters like exclamation. So exclamation has a specific character number, this, dollar, hash, and everything. But this was not enough because we had like a more bigger number of characters. So we introduced Unicode character. I think the total number of characters are 65538. But again, like you can always refer. So these are all now the Unicode characters which are actually accepted. So we have null and we have all of these characters. Let me find the table for you, which you can refer later, although we don't ever use it, right? But again, I think this is the one. So if you ever want to, let's say, print all of these, So if you want to, let's say, print the currency symbols, it goes in this range. So if you will go over here, if you want to kind of put in these currencies, this is something that you will put in a character, and this is what will actually get printed. Okay, so if you ever want to, let's say, print the alphabet, let's see where the alpha. So there are, see, so many characters which are there, and like I was telling you, the total number of characters which are known to Java as a language is 65533. I think must be 2-3 more than this also, but again, you don't have to worry about that. The only remember these ones, which is going to be the basic ones that we know. Remember that the number 0 to 9, okay, basically are in the range of 48 to 57, right? This is how you do it. And then the characters, caps lock ones, runs from 65 to 97, I think. 90, okay? And then 97 is where the smallest character actually starts, and 26 characters are being represented like this. Okay, so just remember these ones, and like I showed you, if you will print their code, right, they will actually give you the corresponding character. Because I wrote, see, 51 over here. See, what does 51 represents? 51 over here. Let's try to search that one. I'm not sure if it will be in this format. They must be putting a A or anything in front of it to basically represent. Okay, this is here. See, 0051 representing Q. Okay, so if you will probably put, let's say, 004E, right, it will print N for you. Clear? And if you want to kind of take this character N and understand it like an integer value, in integer, N is basically considered as 78, which is the decimal value over here. See, the range in Unicode, I would say characters is this. If you want to convert these characters into decimal, right, this is the number. So if you ever want to know Q is actually, what is the number? If you ever try to convert it into an integer value, it will be 81. This is the concept of actually typecasting, okay? How you convert a character into a string and string into a character and numbers and everything related to it, okay? The concept is typecasting. But know that there are these many characters which are available. You can also print this and all of these over here. These are also accepted. Again, not in English language, but maybe in other languages, but Java understands all of them. So this is actually the Latin characters. But again, you don't have to deal with them. In our course, we just deal with the basic English caps lock and lowercase characters. Clear to everyone? Was I successful in kind of explaining to you? Okay, maybe see, just to, again, we've not done typecasting yet, but just to kind of show you an example, let's say I do this. So although you will see that over here, this is the character, which is letter equal to 65. But again, if you know 65 is actually equal to A, there is a way of how we can print that as well. Okay, so that is how all of this actually works. Okay, so we have ASCII code, which was the ASCII tables, which were a set of 128 characters. But in Java, we have moved to a wider range of characters, which we actually call as Unicode characters. Okay, and in the end, to combine the characters, we have the string data type as well, but it is not a primitive data type. It is a non-primitive data type, which we created. Everything in a string has to be under double quotes. Like this. Again, currently out of scope, we will have a separate class on strings as well to understand this concept. Now, what we'll do is we'll answer the question of, why exactly do we have byte? Why do we exactly have short and int? Why not just go ahead and just keep long? and just keep double, which have the highest coverage, right? Why did we really bother to have all of these characters over here, right? Why did we bother to have so many data types? The reason is because of the space that they actually take in your computer memory. That is the reason we have so many data types. Let me show you. Data type, okay, and let's call it size. Okay, so when we take a Boolean value, again in the computer memory, it always just takes 1 bit. Okay, when you are taking characters always take 2 bytes. Okay, in your computer memory. You know what 2 bytes are? How many bits are 2 bytes? Over here, right? In the last class, we talked about that 1 byte is equal to 8 bits, right? So see the difference. A Boolean actually takes 1 bit of space in your computer memory, but a character takes 2 bytes of space, which is 16 bits. Okay. Now see, if you already know that your integer value is always going off the range -28 to 127, always use byte because the space that it takes in computer memory is 1 byte. Whereas if it is slightly bigger, then use short because short actually takes 2 bytes of space in your computer memory. It's actually very huge. Okay. When we talk about int actually takes 4 bytes of computer space. Okay, that is why there is a reason we have so many types just to store integral values, right? You want to space as much space as you can, right? You don't want to waste space, especially when you work with big scaled application where speed of a big concern. You want to use as less space as possible because the space is very expensive and you don't want to waste the resources. So if you're sure the value, let's say, is always of the range 0 to 10, no point of using integer. Never use integer. It takes a lot of space. And then we actually come to long. Long actually takes 8 bytes. Even if you will store the information value 2, right, or a bigger value than that, long takes 8 bytes of space. Okay, then you basically have float. I use a different color. And then you have double. Float basically, again, like int takes 4 bytes and double basically takes 8 bytes. Okay, so now not just on the basis of values, but on the basis of size also, you try to differentiate the data types, right? So if you're taking less space, try to use the data types which also takes less space, right? And when you have more space, then you have, when you have a bigger value, then you have no option whatsoever. So use the bigger value. Clear to everyone? And this completes our journey for data types and variables. I've shown you the example for all of them, right? And you would know about this. And then, like I just mentioned, in today's session, we are talking about primitive data types. And like I mentioned over here, string is not a primitive data type. String is a non-primitive data type. That's why string was mentioned over here. Okay. There will be a separate class where we will talk about non-primitive data types also, where we will talk about string. Maybe let me mention clearly if my handwriting wasn't clear enough. Any other questions to anyone? That is why I was saying, just give me time to explain once, right? You'll know what exactly everything means and what exactly is the relevance for all of it. Any question, anytime, anything, now is the time to ask. If not, what I would recommend is, no, you don't have to do for all, but just try out for a few and see what exactly, are you able to get the right outputs or not? And meanwhile, others can ask questions if they have any. I just have one more small topic to explain after this, which is comments in Java, which will take approximately 5 minutes or max 7-8 minutes. And then I think we'll be done for today's session. I will be adding a bunch of MCQs also for this particular topic because mostly this topic is not asked as it is. It's mostly asked in aptitude rounds and MCQ rounds. So I want to make sure we have a good understanding on these concepts. Okay. So I think by tomorrow or by day after tomorrow, you'll have a quiz kind of a structure on the portal itself. So make sure you participate on that quiz. Okay. It'll be a MCQ round, MCQ questions. Okay. All right, now is the time to ask any questions, any doubts, anything that you would want to ask. I'll wait for another 3 minutes. I'll basically allow others to parallelly write as well if they want. If I missed any doubt somehow, please send it again in the chat, because I think the chat keeps on moving very fast. So I kind of would have missed any question. But all of you understood, right? Anyone felt we went too fast or too slow? Anything like that? Everyone understood, like each and every one of you. I don't want a single person in the session to be left behind. Is there anyone like that? Even complete beginners? I know Aditya said that he's a complete beginners, and a bunch of other students as well. Everything made sense? These are very foundational classes. So I want to make sure each and everyone is clear, because if your foundation is not on the right base, trust me, when we will move to concepts like recursion, backtracking, dynamic programming, it won't make any sense whatsoever. Yes, Dinesh, there is. There is an integer class. There is also a big integer class. Again, those are not primitive data types. Those are all non-primitive data types, which we defined on our own. Sometimes there are cases when even long as a, I would say, data type is not enough to store the numbers, okay, or the, I would say, integer that you have, although that's a very rare case. In those cases, we introduce something even bigger, which is known as big integer, but it's not a primitive data type. It's a non-primitive data type, big integer class. And similarly, there's an integer class also. So there is int data type also, there's an integer class also. Both are different and the purpose is different also. Like there is a difference in the way what kind of purpose they serve. Anyone else? Anything? Guys, you should flood with questions right now. Anything that you would like to ask. It's okay. You can take your time also, and maybe later, if you want to put your questions in the Discord, you can put that as well. I'm more than happy to take up questions over there also. No worries, Santhan. Loops is also coming very soon. I think in next to next class, we'll do loops. Okay, then if everyone is clear, we'll do one last concept, which I wanted to do, which is about comments in Java. Okay, so what you would see is the code that I have been writing. Okay, we want to talk about the concept of Java comments now. What you will see is there is a certain set of code that I had written, not in this particular, I will say, class, but in the previous places where you will see there is some set of code that I wrote, right, which had just two forward slashes in it, and the compiler completely ignored this statement, right? Even over here, you will see that there is a bunch of code that I actually wrote, right, which was completely ignored by Java as a programming language and the compiler, which is compiling the program. Okay, so the idea is comments are a portion of a program that are completely ignored by Java compilers. Okay, what is the purpose they serve? Okay, they are mainly used to help programmers understand the code. Okay, for example, like I said, you would have seen here, I just wrote this statement to help you understand the code, right? Apart from that, this particular statement is not serving any purpose whatsoever, right? Although this is a very small example where not a much code is written, but you will come across scenarios where a single file and the project repository is so big that it's actually having a lot of code in it, right? And hence it's not possible for a human naked eye just to understand it very easily. So what we do is, for a certain set of code, we usually add comments on top of that for people to be able to understand that the next set of, or what does the next set of few lines actually do. Okay, so that is what I would say comments are usually for, to describe the code. Okay, sometimes the code is not very trivial to understand and you would actually like to add a line or two to explain the next few lines. That is where you use comments. Okay, so there are two types of comments in Java. The first is a single line comment and the second is a multi-line comment. Okay, when we talk about single line comment, that means it is a single line comment in a single line. Okay, for example, I could just write over here, hello world program example. So this is a program which kind of, let's say, help you demonstrate the concept of hello world. Okay, then for example, a comment is sometimes a little longer, right? So single line comments are always represented by this, but sometimes you would need, let's say, not just one line but 2-3 lines to actually write a comment. So what do you do in that case? You do this, you do this, and you do this. This is where you want to write multi-line comments. Okay, so all of this is a comment now. This is an illustration of a program used to depict the concept of variables and data types in Java. Okay, so this will basically help us to understand the concept of data types in Java. And this is a multi-line comment, which is basically spread across multiple. Okay, this type of comment is also known as, with another terminology, known as traditional comment. Okay, so here everything is basically between this. Okay, all the lines are basically written between these two, / star and then slash and then / slash. Okay, this is how you write this, right? Now, another very important thing I want to kind of tell over here, and which is a very generic discussion in terms of designing comments, right? When we talk about comments, there is always a borderline that you have to draw. Sometimes what people do is they have written only 10 set of lines or 10 set of lines of code, and they write comments worth 20 set of lines. Okay, again, remember, ideally, what the book, there is a very good book by the name of Clean Code. What it actually says is, in an ideal world, there should not be a need to write any comments whatsoever. In an ideal world, your variable names and your functions names should be such well defined that there should not be a need for any comment whatsoever, right? That your variable names are so good, your function names are so good that they only kind of help you to understand what exactly the code is actually doing, instead of actually putting comments like these. But again, we're not really living in a perfect world. We're living in a practical world. So it's not always possible to have that scenarios. There will be situations, where you want to write the code, right? And it's not really possible to kind of just use function names and variable names in order to be able to depict everything. So in those situations, we have to write the code. Okay. But it's my duty to also tell you that sometimes ideally the code should be self-describing and the comments should rarely be used, but again, it's a personal opinion. Some companies, for example, when I used to work at Flipkart, they never believed in the ideology of comments, right? We were always refrained from writing any comments. Even when I, as a beginner, used to raise any PR at my at Flipkart, they used to specifically tell me, please do not write any comment. Your functions and your code should be descriptive enough to let the other person know what you're doing. Okay, but again, it's not a rule. It's a genuine convention every company is followed. At Microsoft also, we follow the same ideology, but with not such hard and fast rule, right? There are situations where we are allowed to write comments, and it's good because it helps other engineers to kind of not go through each and every line one by one. They can just go to the very top, right? Read what it's actually done in the code and just move forward. Clear to everyone? Absolutely clear. Akshat, yes, but although I never say that that certificate is going to, help you get a job or anything like that in the world. Okay, you can get a certificate. We will provide a certificate in case if you want, for your own understanding. But again, don't assume that it's gonna get you, the world, or it's gonna get you fast tracked into interviews. It's not like that. Okay, always your own skill is kind of what get you there. So we just have one part left, okay, which is about, we talked about how do we take input, okay. In Java as a programming language, there is a scanner class which is used to, we talked about how to take output, how to present output. We have to talk about how do we take input, which we can talk about in the next class. There is a scanner class using which you can take input from the console. Touch typing is necessary to learn? No, it's not necessary. When you will write more and more code, then only you will become comfortable. Yes, Santika, there is. We will talk about that also. All right, with this, actually, I think we've reached to the very end of the session. In the next session, what will happen is we'll just quickly go through and understand the concept of how do we take basic inputs, right? After that, we have to talk about the concepts of operators, expressions, right? And blocks, right? And a little bit more trivial concepts. We talk about if and else as a concept as well. And then we move ahead to solve a bunch of problems in order to concretize the concept that we have actually learned. Thank you so much for attending this session, right? I hope you had a fun time and you were able to understand in detail. My idea is always, again, in theoretical classes, at least to, help you or just sit back, relax, don't worry about anything, right? Just like listen to what I'm saying, grab the concept, ask any relevant questions you have. And then after the session, you can always take the time to revise and maybe put your questions on Discord. If you have any feedback about the course, anything that you felt about the session, right? Anything about the teaching style, anything that we could have done differently, I'm open to any kind of feedback like that as well. Okay, few things to remember. This code that we wrote over here, this notes that we wrote over here, and this OneNote, everything that is coming over here, all of this will be shared as well. Okay, and in the platform itself, if all of you would have seen, the notes are available very beautifully and you are able to access those as well. Let me just try to maybe see if I can show you the ideal view as well. Some people were saying that their videos are not playing and they're not able to access the codes or anything, or maybe that should never ideally be the case, right? It should ideally be always be able to get you and you should be able to have access. Okay, the code which I have written, Akshat, this one, this is going to be pushed to GitHub. This and this will go directly on the portal. Okay, because I saw that in fact there was a very good option over there only to kind of be able to learn all these concepts. So I don't want to introduce too many of scattered things over there. So if you will go over here, like this is how ideally your view should look like of the session, right? This is the introductory session. This is introduction to programming, right? This is the video for the last session, right? If you will run it, you will be able to access everything, the content that we actually learned. If it's not running, are kind of if it's not running, just kind of refresh once and it will run for you. And the notes are also available beautifully on the platform only. If you will open it, you can go through all the notes over here. Okay, there's a functionality to zoom in and zoom out also in this case, right? Like you can just go over here and all the notes that we have written are available. Similar is the structure that would happen for the rest of the classes as well, except for the coding part, the programs that we have written, these I will keep on pushing to GitHub. Yes, Ankan, don't worry, I will. We usually kind of, are a little time constrained also sometimes. So it won't be possible to do that at the end of every lecture, but I will try to do my best for most of them. I do have a good bunch of questions in terms of puzzles that I will share whenever we have some time and whenever, we want a little bit relaxed classes when we have done a lot of content. Perfect. So should we end on that note? If everyone is clear and nobody has any questions, the recordings will come by tomorrow morning. Ideally, the recordings are uploaded by 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. if I am awake and I'm actually working till that long, right? But if it's not, then usually expect the recordings to come by next morning. Okay. We're trying a way of kind of integrating the videos directly in the portal itself, but it's these are a little administrative things which are taking a little bit time, but nonetheless we want the experience always to be very smooth. I have not yet uploaded anything on GitHub yet, Milit. I will do that at the end of the session today and I'll share that on Discord. Okay. Perfect then. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for attending the session. Just one thing. For the Saturday class, are you all okay 9 to 11 or would you want to move it to 12 to 2? Let me do a poll. Wait. Poll is what will help. I want to accommodate most of the students. That's why I am kind of giving a choice. I'm not sure if this worked or not. Just see once. Are you able to get any poll on your screens? Okay. Just vote on that once. Everyone has voted. I think there are still 6 students left who haven't voted. Okay, I know many of you have a 12 to 2 Node.js class batch also. I think that's one of the reasons why you would be voting more for 9 to 11. That another case, don't worry. Okay, let's have 9 to 11 only. Okay, maybe next week we'll do a poll again. Usually for Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's always fixed 9 to 11. But for the Saturday classes, we will usually take a poll and based on that, take the decision. Okay. Perfect. So Akshat, we already done an installment of course by Sanket Node.js. So a bunch of folks have actually so we are wrapping up the Node.js course and now we are moving on to the Java course. So a bunch of students are actually wrapping up the previous course parallelly, while they are doing the Java course. So it's like there's a 2-week overlap between both the courses, but eventually everyone will shift towards the Java course. Okay, then I think everyone would be more aligned towards 12 to 2. I know that. Okay then. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Good night. The weekend is almost there. So please prepare well and keep practicing, right? Participate in the quiz also that would come, and let's meet in the next session. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye. Good night.